Coming to the second year mostly based on the concepts. So, when we see the transportation in plants, so this requires the thorough understanding of the cell membrane. So, membrane structure is very essential. Then how the membrane structure is elucidated, so that also must be understood by the student, so that he can easily identify different aspects of the membrane. So, membrane, how it is going to allow the different nutrients? It requires particular transporters. Transporters are nothing but proteins. Then these proteins sometimes can be compared with enzymes also. We can see in the enzymes, transportation requires the attachment of that particular nutrient to that enzyme, so that a conformational change take place, so that the nutrient will be pushed towards the other side. And here requirement of the electropotential gradient of the membrane, that is the difference in the concentration gradient of a particular ion. So, then only it is possible to identify whether it is active transport or it may be passive transport. Then how the water is going to move across the membrane, then what is the difference between diffusion and what is the osmosis. Then based on this we can explain the ascent of sap, that how the plants are going to push the water to the topmost region, then how the plants are going to absorb the water from the soil, then how the plants are going to lose the water into the atmosphere. So, for this particular aspect we have to understand the structure of the membrane, the physics of the diffusion, or it may be osmosis. Then in the particularly in the case of the transportation we can see uniporters. Uniporters require lot of energy, and this is a active transport always. Then what is the difference between pump and a channel? So, pump requires energy, whereas a channel is a passive, but both are involving the presence of a protein. So, carriers are present. That means a facilitated transport means involvement of a facilitator or a protein present in the membrane, and these membrane proteins will allow the movement of certain nutrients or molecules into the membrane. So, it may be passive or it may be active. Then when we should call it as active? So, when it is transporting from low potential to the higher potential, so that is a active transport. Then sometimes even though low potential and higher potential is there, charge may also be different. So, this is a passive transport. So, in the ionic form means it is a cation or anionic form. Whenever a nutrient is moving across the membrane, it may be passive or it may be active. Then suppose the concentration gradient is inside more concentration may be there and outside less concentration may be there. So, sometimes it also may be passive. So, that means, so we have to consider the charge of the particle also. So, then only we can understand how these particles are moving inside, how the membrane is going to transport. So, generally 1 or 2 questions will be asked from this particular chapter. So, thorough understanding requires a lot of spending of the time on it. So, just understanding the subject, you cannot write different questions from this chapter. Then coming to the mineral nutrition. So, mineral nutrition generally we can see knowledge based questions are given, and this knowledge based questions, so for which metabolic reaction the minerals are essential. So, when we study the photosynthesis or when we study the respiration or when we study different metabolic activities, all these require enzymes, because in the all living organisms all reactions are enzyme mediated. So, enzyme requires cofactors. So, when we see the photosynthesis chapter, certain enzymes require magnesium and certain enzymes require calcium as a cofactor, and those also must be clubbed with the mineral nutrition in the second chapter. So, when we see the how the nutrients are going to move inside, that comes under the first chapter. Then what kind of minerals are required for the metabolic activity, that comes under the second chapter, as well as in every metabolic reactions. In the minerals, some mineral deficiency symptoms are given, and those mineral deficiency symptoms we have to by heart. So, there is no simple procedure to remember all this, we have to by heart it thoroughly. Then when we see the particular, for example, calcium is given, then how the calcium is essential for the plant means, so where exactly this calcium is present? The calcium may be present as a cofactor for the enzymes, or sometimes we can see in the middle lamellum lot of calcium is present. So, formation of a middle lamellum or formation of a middle lamellum in the cell division. That means a cell division may be affected, and if a cell division is affected, middle lamellum is not going to be formed. Then certain metabolic reactions, for example, we can say calcium is essential for the photosynthesis, iron is essential for the photosynthesis. Where exactly these are utilized? These are electron carriers. In cytochromes we can see iron. So when we remember all those metabolic reactions along with the different minerals used there, then only we can remember thoroughly then what kind of symptoms we can observe in the plant. So nitrogen is essential for the plant, that is a essential mineral nutrient. Then where exactly nitrogen is used? Then when nitrogen is deficient in the soils, what kind of symptoms we can get? So then we immediately have to remember where exactly nitrogen is being utilized. In nucleic acids we can see the nitrogen. In certain plant hormones, for example, auxins are there and cytokinins are there, where nitrogen is essential. Then in the photosynthesis, structurally the pigments require nitrogen. Then in the nitrogen fixation, so nitrogen fixation, when nitrogen is absent or molybdenum is absent, nitrogen is not able to be fixed thoroughly. So all this we have to remember, so then only we can understand what kind of symptoms we can get in the plants or we can observe in the plants, so that that topic can be easily understood. So in this entire mineral nutrition, one important topic is a nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation requires a lot of energy, and this energy will be produced in the respiration or it may be in the photosynthesis. So that photosynthesis chapter as well as the respiration chapter is also linked to this nitrogen fixation. So after the completion of the reading of this nitrogen fixation, we will get a idea. That idea is a basic idea, but not thoroughly the concept of the nitrogen fixation. But once we complete the chapter photosynthesis or respiration, we can easily understand how the plant is going to get ATP or NADPH2 that requires in the nitrogen fixation. So the nitrogen fixation, for example, during the daytime, when you fertilize the plant, when you apply the fertilizers like a urea or it may be potassium nitrate, the plants will utilize a lot of energy stored in the form of a starch or in the form of a protein. So that instead of a growth of the plant, we can observe the retardation of the plant. So we have to fertilize the plant only in the daytime, so that a lot of energy easily available from the sunlight will be utilized by the plant. So this is an ecological aspect, and in photosynthesis a lot of energy is produced cheaply. Then how it is going to be produced? Then how much energy can be utilized by this plant in the assimilation? So that we have to understand only after the complete study of the photosynthesis and respiratory chapters. Then coming to the photosynthesis chapter, and this photosynthesis chapter is a concept based. Then basic aspects of the photosynthesis, what exactly happens to the carbon dioxide. Then some experimental evidences for that. Then experiments related to the photosynthesis, all of them must be thoroughly studied and understood thoroughly. Then particularly in the case of the photosynthesis, light reactions, what are light reactions? Then which part of the plant participates in the light reaction? Then what are the products of the light reaction? How the energy is going to be converted from the light into different chemicals? Then how this process take place? So here generally we say electron transport. Then what actually electron transport? How the electron is going to be released from the pigment molecule? So when a photon of light energy strikes, then energy, if it is a more to raise the electron, electron is going to be raised and the pigment is going to get oxidized. Then oxidized pigment must reach to the ground state or more stable state. Then where exactly this electron is going to be taken from? That is the water. Then all these aspects are very, very important in the light reactions. Then what is a cyclic electron movement? Then what is a non-cyclic electron movement? Where exactly to take place? Then for one cyclic electron transport, is it possible always for the non-cyclic electron transport? Then how the ATP is going to be formed? Then what is actually the chemoosmotic process? Then what are the different requirements for the chemiosmosis process? For example, in the chemiosmosis process, a membrane must be present. Membrane potential is essential. Membrane potential depends on the ionic gradient across the membrane. This ionic gradient is a proton gradient. Then how the proton gradient develops? Proton gradient develops due to the light. So light is the essential source for the energy that creates first the ionic gradient across the membrane. Then this ionic gradient, particularly in the form of a protons, will convert the ADP into ATP. and here ADP formation from ADP is not depending on the protons, it is a movement of the protons. So, for this a particular enzyme is required, ATP synthase, that is present always attached to the membrane. So, only membrane bound pigments will participate in the photosynthesis or energy conversion. Then after the production of certain power, for example, in the case of a photosynthesis ATP or it may be NADPH2, it will be utilized in the reduction of the carbon dioxide. Then why carbon dioxide cannot be reduced directly from the protons from the water? Difference between the redox potential of the water and carbon dioxide. So, when we see the equation, carbon dioxide combines with the water, then what happens if carbon dioxide combines with the water? It will become a carbonated water. Then why it has to produce the carbohydrate? Carbon dioxide is going to be reduced. Then from where it get protons? It get protons from the water. Then how the water is going to lose the protons? So, when we boil the water, the protons and electrons are not going to be separated. So, in the presence of a pigment and a light, then excitation of the pigment releases the electrons. Then electrons are going to be transported depending on the redox potential. And in this process, many different intermediate proteins are going to participate and ultimately power is going to be produced. So, this a super reduced power will reduce the carbon dioxide. So, this is actually the concept. This concept based questions, so generally can be answered only when we understand the concept. So, in the reduction of the carbon dioxide, that is a dark reaction. So, in the dark reaction, how the carbon dioxide is going to be produced? Then what is actually the product of a photosynthesis? Product of the photosynthesis is a 3 carbon compound, that is a triose phosphates. So, they may be converted into starch. Then where exactly starch is going to be formed? Outside the plastid or inside the plastid, or elsewhere the carbohydrates are going to be formed. So, that is a concept. Then how the carbon dioxide is going to be reduced in a sequential order, that is a knowledge based. Then what is the first product? Then how it is going to utilize the energy produced in the light and it is going to convert into another substance. So, this is a knowledge based question that we can directly get from the textbook while reading the chapter, but conceptual understanding requires a thorough reading and guidance of a proper lecturer, so that you can understand the concept. Then analytical questions will be there. These analytical questions, sometimes we can say what happens if carbon dioxide levels are increased in the atmosphere, then what kind of plants can survive in this high levels of carbon dioxide. So, that is analytical based. So, this analytical base also requires the proper understanding of the different carbon dioxide reduction methods. So, here in the textbook or in the syllabus, C3 cycles are there and C4 cycles are there, that is a C3 plants and the C4 plants and CAM plants. CAM plants means the desert plants, and beside this photorespiration. So, all of them are confusing. So, student will confuse from one cycle to the other cycle. So, that in studying the photosynthesis, actually the basic concepts of all these different 4 carbon fixations are essential. Then which cell organelles are going to participate in this carbon fixation is also very, very important, so that he can write carefully the analytical questions also. Then coming to the chapter respiration. So, respiration is quite opposite to the photosynthesis. When photosynthesis and respiration reactions are at equilibrium status, we can say that is a carbon dioxide compensation point. Photosynthesis reduces the carbon dioxide and the respiration oxidizes the carbohydrates, so that these two reactions are always opposite. So, when they reach equilibrium, then what is that condition is called? Then in which cell or in which cell part the respiration take place? Then what are the different aspects of the respiration? The different aspects of the respiration, 3 different compartments participate. One is a cytosol, then another is a mitochondria, matrix, and another is a internal membrane. Then understanding the respiration is very, very easy. Then some topics that is not given in the textbook also has to be studied here. For example, the photorespiration, we can study both in photosynthesis as well as in the respiration. This photorespiration is not given in detail in the textbook. So, that is also very important. In the respiration also, one additional topic like HMP pathway, then entire photosynthetic oxidation is not possible in all the plants or all the living organisms. Some part of it is by one process, that is a glycolysis, and some part will be in the HMP pathway. Then what is the uses of the HMP pathway for the plant or animal, or it may be organism? Here in the textbook, respiration is dealt with no difference is given from plant and animal. Here when we study the botany or respiration of the plants, so we have to study only the aspects of the respiration in relation to the plants. So in plants lactic acid formation is not possible. In plants we can see the formation of a pyruvic acid, the 3 carbon compound, and how it is going to be degraded, then different intermediate metabolites and how much energy is going to be produced in the respiration, and this is the knowledge based questions. Then concept means, so when student is studying the both these chapters, that is the metabolic pathways like photosynthesis and respiration, so he must always conceive this as a two opposite reactions. So photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is going to be reduced and into carbohydrates, whereas in the respiration carbohydrates are oxidized to release carbon dioxide and water. So these two aspects must be thoroughly understood. So when we see the respiration, so in the respiration chapter one additional small topic we have to study, that is HMP pathway. So all the respiratory substrate in the plants or animals or in the bacteria is not going to oxidize to release energy. Then some part of it, that is a 30% of it, nearly 30% of this respiratory substrate will enter into a different pathway, that is a HMP pathway. HMP pathway is in plants particularly, it is for the generation of aromatic amino acids or in the formation of a lignin or in the formation of a NADPH2. So this NADPH2 released in the respiration in the HMP pathway is going to be utilized in the nitrogen fixation. So when we see the nitrogen fixation and the requirement for the energy for the nitrogen fixation and understanding the HMP pathway. So HMP pathway provides energy for the nitrogen fixation, that is a reduced substance in the form of NADPH2, whereas in the normal oxidation of a respiratory substrate in the Krebs cycle, NADH is going to be produced. NADH, there is a reduced form of NADH is going to be produced. So both these are different. In photosynthesis NADPH2 can be produced, then in HMP pathway also NADPH2 is produced, and this is for the reduction of the atmospheric nitrogen. So nitrogen fixation requires a lot of energy. This energy plant will obtain from the photosynthesis during the daytime, or if it is a night time it has to get from the HMP pathway. So when we see the holistic approach to the respiration, how much energy is going to be produced, then what can be the reason for the low production? For example, in the anaerobic respiration, every organism can undergo anaerobic respiration. So this anaerobic respiration will not lead to the formation of pyruvic acid and enter into the mitochondria. So sometimes mitochondria may be there, but the requirement of oxygen may not be sufficient for the muscles or the plant tissues, then it will enter into anaerobic pathway. Anaerobic pathway lead to the formation of alcohol, ethyl alcohol, or it may be acetic acid. Then in the Krebs cycle, lot of electron carriers are released, and these electron carriers will enter into the inner mitochondrial membrane. Then electrons will be transported along with protons to the oxygen. Here importance of oxygen is very less, but without oxygen these reactions will not take place. Then how much energy is produced in the bacteria? So bacteria also can respire, but in the respiration of the bacteria more energy is possible because of the absence of mitochondria. So the reduced substance released in the glycolysis must release its electrons and protons to the oxygen, that requires entry of this reduced substance into the mitochondria. But whereas absence of mitochondria will lead to the more energy formation in the bacteria. So these conceptual aspects must be understood by the student. So generally in the physiology, particularly in the photosynthesis or respiration, knowledge based questions are asked less, whereas the concept based questions will be more. Then coming to the plant regulatory or plant regulators, or we can call them as a growth regulators or hormones. So growth regulators and hormones is a confusing for the student, because not like in the animals, a hormone will have a particular or a specific activity. In plants all these hormones together will provide a reaction, or together will provide a physiological reaction in the plants. For example, auxin or cytokinin, these two together will help in the development of a branch. So these aspects the student must carefully analyze depending on the question. So here knowledge based questions will be there as well as analytical questions also will be there. So in the plant growth regulators, one small topic also may be there, seed germination. Seed germination, what are the conditions for the seed dormancy? Then what is the photoperiodism? What is the vanillization? For photoperiodism or vanillization, a particular plant pigment is essential, that is a phytochrome. Phytochrome can exist in two different forms. One can act in a far red, another is a red form. Then far red form is always a physiologically active form. Then regarding this, a basic knowledge is required for the student to understand the photoperiodism or vanillization. Then examples of the photoperiodism and the vanillization, that is the knowledge based questions. So in the entire physiology, more questions are possible from mineral nutrition and plant growth regulators or plant hormones, their metabolic effect on the plant differentiation or plant growth. So that is a aspect of the physiology. Then coming to the other topic like bacteria and virus, in particular in the second year, these two aspects we can study in the first year unit of life or first year biological classification. Here more detailed aspects of virus is given, then how virus is going to be multiplied. Already we have seen that when we study the virus in biological oxidation, we have to understand the what are the topics written in the second year in the virus topic or in the bacteria. So particularly in the studying of the virus and bacterial multiplication, how these are going to be transmitted and how the genome is going to behave, that is a good aspect to understand the molecular genetics. Then coming to the genetics, in the genetics in zoology also we can see the genetics, and in the biology also we can, in the botany also we can see the genetics. When we see the genetical aspects or inheritance, loss of inheritance, so basic understanding of the loss of inheritance, it is not just what are the results of the experiments, then how how Mendel could analyze this result of his experiments is very important. For example, segregation. What is the segregation? Then what are being segregated? Here alleles are segregated. Then what are alleles? Where exactly they are present? Then what is assorted? Genes are assorted, not the alleles. Then what is the difference between gene and allele? So whenever we understand difference between gene and allele, we can understand the loss of the Mendel. So here non-Mendelian. Non-Mendelian means sexual inheritance. Sex inheritance is a non-Mendelian. Because when Mendel studied, he could not identify the difference in the reciprocal cross. So that he understood that sex is not or gender of the plant is not related to the inheritance rules. Then one more is Mendel always studied the inheritance, but not the how the characters are appeared in the progeny. That is, the expression is not concerned with, only the inheritance. So when we see the inheritance like a codominance or incomplete inheritance, so these two also follow the Mendel's inheritance, because Mendel studied inheritance but not the expression. So expression is different from the inheritance. Then some basic ideas regarding the what are supplementary genes, then what are codominants. So these are given in the textbook. Then sometimes epistasis, one or two questions here and there appeared in the examinations. What is an epistasis? Then different deviations from the Mendel. So these are all not important for the student, just whatever given in the textbook, basic knowledge of the inheritance performed by Mr. Mendel is important there. Then how this segregation take place and how the assortment take place, that requires the knowledge regarding the meiosis. So meiosis, once we study thoroughly, then we can easily identify how the genes are going to be assorted and how the alleles are going to be segregated, so that we can easily follow the progeny patterns. Then coming to the molecular genetics means the structure of the DNA is very important. Then how the DNA replicates, then how the DNA is going to express. Then all this student feel very, very difficult in understanding. So once you are thorough with the DNA structure, then how the DNA is going to be replicated, then you can easily understand how it is going to express. Then here one genetic code is given. So when we see the transmission of the characters from parent to the offspring, it is through the chemical transmission in the form of a DNA. Then whereas a expression is in the form of a protein. And these two chemical components are quite different. Then what can be the relationship between these two? That relationship between these two different chemical components, we can call it as a genetic code. So genetic code, one code table is given. The student generally they will by heart this table. So student need not by heart the table. Whenever questions based on this table, So a table will be given, then you have to identify the different answers from that table. So some codons the student has to remember, that is a triple U or a triple A, what is a triple C, then what is the meaning of a triple G, then what are the starting codon, then exceptions in the starting codon, then what different aspects of the genetic code. Suppose a question may be asked, a gene from fungus is taken and introduced into the human being. Is it possible to express? Means definitely it will express. Then what are the code character, so that we can justify that. Code character is, genetic code is universal. So like this some questions, analytical questions may be asked from this. So student need not worry about this chapter as a direct questions will be asked. No analytical questions will be asked from this. In some examinations, some additional information may be asked regarding the what is a Pribnow box, what is a Hogness box. So to understand that, student has to study more. So it is not advisable for the student. If at all any difficult questions are there, better to leave that question, so that the time can be saved or a confidence can be built up in the student. Then when we see the biotechnology, so biotechnology is a purely technical aspect. The different techniques can be used by different scientists or different laboratories. So generalized, it is actually generalized in the biotechnology. So in the generalization, what is actually the biotechnology? What is actually the genetic engineering? So in genetic engineering, a gene can be transferred from one organism to the other organism. That is a basic concept. Then gene must be isolated and gene must be purified and gene must be introduced into the other organism. So at every step different techniques are going to be used. So these techniques are not hard rules. So generally a scientist will develop his own technique. So whatever given in the textbook, that is enough. Then what are different restriction enzymes? What are the use of these restriction enzymes? Then how the restriction enzymes are nomenclatured? Then what are the applications of this biotechnology? The applications, you may find some examples from the animals or it may be from the plants. So in this we can see particularly one difficult topic is there, that is interference, RNA interference. RNA interference, whatever given in that paragraph must be remembered by the student, not more than that, because that is a very difficult to understand by the student. So that a topic, particularly very small topic, so he can go through that textbook and whatever written in there he can remember it. Then what is a BT cotton? Then coming to the last chapter, strategies and increasing the food supply. So plant breeding, how the plant breeding is possible. Then what are the guidelines we have to follow in the plant breeding. Here more examples are given regarding the different varieties of different plants. Then in what way those are superior to the normal plants. So this is a knowledge based. So we have, the student has to by heart it. So there is no other rule. Name of the plant, then variety, then what purpose the variety is used, whether it is a disease resistance or high yielding, or it may be a protection for different plant pests. So in this chapter particularly, there is no much concept based questions, just a knowledge based question, that is a how the biotechnology is used or expression of this biotechnology process, not actually the principles of biotechnology. Then finally we can say the microbes in human welfare. This microbes in human welfare always must be studied along with the bacteria, or it may be biological classification, because many microorganisms are useful to the human day-to-day life, and these utilities, whether it is a utility in agriculture or utility in the medicine or utility in the food industry, all of them are directly we can remember it. We can get more knowledge based questions from this. So when we see the entire second year textbook, so concentration must be more on the genetics, concepts of genetics. And another is a microbes in human welfare, as a lot of possibilities there for the framing of the question with the knowledge base. Then for the physiology, even though that is a very difficult, student must read it, so that once he read it, definitely he can answer the questions there. Whether it is a photosynthesis or respiration, student need not feel any difficulty in it. Less questions will be possible. Every chapter, total physiology, sometimes it may be 3 questions or it may be 4 questions. Most of them easily answerable questions. So genetics particularly, some problems may be given. Solving the problems, so there is no need of any to put effort by the student. So just understanding the concept. If at all statements are given from this genetics chapter, then it will be very difficult. So each statement must be studied with thoroughly, so that how it is different from the other statement. So in this process, he may make a mistake there. So definitely he must see the options first, then the answers there, and then elimination process and come to the conclusion. In the biotechnology chapter, generally 1 or 2 questions will be given, and that 2 direct questions, so that it will not pose any problem for the student from biotechnology, even though the chapter may be difficult to understand. So, whatever is given, so that we can understand, that is only purely a technical aspects are there in this biotechnology. So, totally when we compare the first and second year topics, so more questions are possible from the first year topics. Then in the second year, more questions are possible only from the genetics. So, there is no hard rule that 20 questions or equal questions may be must be framed from the first and second year. So, any chapter may be completely eliminated from framing any question. So, in the preparation of this examination, first thing a student must do is he must be thorough with the knowledge based questions, then understanding the topic conceptually, and then analytical ability has to increase by, if any doubts are there, he must get immediately clarified from the person, or if any material is there, he can go through that material. So, that will make the student perfect for the examination, particularly in the case of the botany.